you go to a casino, it's you against the house. But when you go to a horse track, it's parimutuel wagering, meaning you against the other bettors. So the ability to process the data is key to your success. And I'm going to teach you how to read a racing form in just a couple of minutes. I grabbed last year's Derby program, and the first thing you want to look at is how the horse fared in its most recent races. So you zoom in right here to this column. This is Zandon from last year's Derby, and the most recent race is at the top, and then it goes back in time. And you can literally follow how the horse did throughout the race. So for instance, right here in Zandon's most recent race, it was 9th by 4, and then 10th by 4.5, then 11th by 5 at the midway point of the race, then closed up to 2nd by 1 length, that's what that means, and then finished 1st by 2.5 lengths. And you can see the same kind of running style going back over time for Zandon. Tends to come from way back and get up, if not win, get really close. Second thing you want to look at is the level of competition a horse has been racing at. This is Messier from last year's Derby, and you can see here in a limited number of starts, after Messier broke its maiden, it moved right up into graded stakes races. These G's right here, grade 1, grade 3, grade 2s, those are all the highest level of competition a horse can face. So you can see here Messier has been battling the very best that horse could possibly battle in its way up to the Derby. Next thing to look at, and a lot of people forget to do this, is the narrative portion of the past performances all the way over on the far right-hand portion of the program. This is, in limited fashion, gives you a few words about whether or not the horse had any kind of race trouble, had any kind of excuse in a race. And you can see here with Ethereal Road from last year, rolling up toward Derby, had all sorts of problems in these races. Bumped at the start, raced 5 wide and got bumped, 4 wide. Another race was 5 wide. Horses running 4, 5, 6 wide obviously have farther to run. Hesitated at the break. All sorts of racing trouble Ethereal Road had, and that's interesting to make note of because sometimes there are excuses in horse racing. A lot of people put a lot of stock into how a horse is actually working out. They work out every 1 or 2 weeks. And so in the racing form, at the very bottom of the column, and I've highlighted them in yellow here, you'll see the workouts, and I'll explain how this reads to you. This is Pioneer of Medina last year. The most recent workout is first. They give you the date and the distance worked out, the time, and then how the horse ranked versus other horses at the distance that day. Sometimes there are more than 100 horses working out a particular track at a certain distance. Like right here, Pioneer Medina ran 4 furlongs in 47 seconds that day. And you say, well, that means nothing to me. But then you see it was 9th fastest out of 133 horses that trained at 4 furlongs that day at the track. And then over here, went 5 furlongs in 59 seconds. And what you see right here, this is called a bullet. Have you ever heard people say, well, that horse put up a bullet? A bullet means it was the fastest workout of the day, fastest out of 8 that day. And you can see right over here, the previous workout before that for Pioneer Medina, 5 furlongs in a minute. That was also a bullet. For many people, the single most important thing in the racing form is the speed figure. It's an apples to apples way of comparing different horses on different tracks and distances and weather conditions and times. It was a formula developed to spit you out a number that you can then compare to the speed figure numbers of other horses. And this is Mo Donegal from last year. And Mo Donegal started out, the most recent at the top, and the longest to go is at the bottom. Mo Donegal's speed figures for all these different races on different tracks started out at 75, then he went to a 93, and then a 93, and then he moved on up to a 103 in the last race. And that's very important because another thing you want to have prevalent in your speed figure analysis is you want to see horses getting better as they age in the speed figure department. And one last thing to look at that can be important at times, and we certainly saw it last year with the Kentucky Derby, Rich Strike had really no reason to win the Derby if you look at all the information I just went over in the racing form, except there's a column that helps explain track affinity. Some horses just love certain tracks better than others. And if you notice right over here, they have a little column for how this horse has done at that particular track, Churchill Downs, on the dirt. And look at here, Rich Strike only race at Churchill Downs and won it. Yes, it was a maiden claimer, but Rich Strike still won a race at Churchill Downs. And looking back on last year's Kentucky Derby, that's one of the only things people can come up with trying to explain how in the world Rich Strike pulled off the second biggest upset in the history of the Kentucky Derby. And that's basically all there is to it. Whether you're betting money or just trying to pick winners against your friends, a little study never hurt anybody. And when you're wrong, and you will be wrong, go back and check and see what you might have missed. That's the best way to learn. I'm John Boel, Wave News.